Welcome back, everyone. For today's video, we are going to be taking a look at the fourth round of the FIDE Candidates tournament being held here in Toronto, Canada. Now, yesterday I drew fairly quickly against Nijat Abbasov from Azerbaijan, and today I'm paired against the Indian Wonder Kid, one of the players who's been anointed as a potential successor to Magnus Carlsen as the world champion, and that, of course, would be Ramesh Babu Praggnanandhaa from India. Now, Praggnanandhaa qualified for the Candidates tournament through the FIDE World Cup, which was held in Baku, Azerbaijan last August, and he had a great run defeating yours truly, Hikaru Nakamura. He also beat Fabiano Caruana before losing in the finals to none other than Magnus Carlsen himself. So the future is looking really, really bright for Pragg. Now, he got off to a strange start here. He drew the first game, lost the second game in a wild thriller against Gukesh, his Indian compatriot. But then yesterday, he won a stunning game against Vidit Santosh Gujarati, also from India, and he's back to an even score. So today I'm playing with the white pieces, and definitely I want to try to create some chances to win the game and get back into the hunt for first place. Now, keep in mind this tournament is a marathon, not a sprint, so you do have to judge when those moments are right. So here we go. The game starts out with e4, and in this position here, we now get the move e5 from Pragg, knight f3, knight c6, bishop b5, a6, bishop a4, and we're in a classic Spanish, but Pragg decides to play the move knight f6. Now, it's very unfortunate, and this is where sometimes I talk about luck in terms of events like the Candidates, because yesterday, Pragg shocked the world and his opponent Vidit by playing the delayed Schliemann with this move f5. Now, it's really a tragedy that Pragg played this against Vidit and not against me, and the reason I bring this up is because online I've played against a famous Greek player by the name of Nicholas Theodorou, who uses the username Kriari, and he's actually played this variation against me quite a few times, so I'm very familiar with it, and if I had gotten this on the board yesterday or even today, I have a good feeling that I probably would have won the game. Alas, it wasn't meant to be. So instead, Pragg plays knight f6, and I was a little bit disappointed because obviously you don't know what your opponents are going to do, but I had a feeling that after Pragg took some wild chances against Gukesh and Vidit, he'd probably try to settle down and be rock solid. So he plays knight f6, I go d3, we get bishop c5, castles, b5, bishop b3, and now he plays this move h6. Now the reason that Pragg plays h6 here is that if black were to castle right away, white can play this move bishop g5, pinning the knight on f6, and the game gets very, very sharp after h6 and bishop to h4. So Pragg decides to play h6 first, stopping bishop to g5, and now I play this move a4. Pragg goes rook to b8, important move if black were to castle here. Now I can trade the pawns on b5, and if you take back, spaghetti-o, you lose the rook on a8, and you lose the game. So Pragg goes rook to b8, so now if I take on b5, you can simply take, and there is no free rook on this a8 square. So after rook b8, I play this move bishop to e3. We trade the bishops here, and the reason for me playing bishop e3 is quite straightforward. Black has this nice op on c5, spying the pawn on f2 and the king on g1, and when I play bishop to e3 and we trade, now my op is spying this pawn on f7 as well as the king on g8 down the road. Game continues with d6. I play takes. Now I go queen to e1, Pragg castles, and here I play this move h3. Now this is already a little bit wrong here, but the reason that I went for this is that actually in this position, what I remembered here was after queen e1 castles, if I put the knight on c3, black can play this move bishop to e6 right away. And what I remembered from my preparation in a similar position before the game is that generally speaking, when black plays bishop to e6, when you trade the bishops, you want to play for c3 and let's just say d4 here, building a big white center here, the pawns on e4 and d4, as well as the pawns on e3 and c3, protecting everything at the same time. So I remembered this during the game, which is why I played this waiting move h3 here. It also creates a classic luft for the king. There will be no ice skaters on the back rank here, as I always have a square available for my king. Pragg plays knight to e7, and this is a very, very tricky move. Very, very precise, I'd add as well, because if Pragg were to play bishop e6, now I trade and go c3, and I get my desired setup with the pawns on the third rank, and eventually this big white center. So after knight to e7, now I play knight c3, and here Pragg plays move bishop e6. Now, as soon as Pragg played bishop e6, I was very unhappy because I realized what he had done. He had tricked me so that now I've put the knight on c3. I can no longer push this pawn to c3, and now it's simply not the position I want when I trade the bishops. So Here I play this move knight d2 after a very long think. I was actually feeling quite good about myself here. I was up about 20 minutes on the clock, but as soon as Pragg played this move, I started to realize things aren't going great, so I spent 17 minutes before playing knight d2, and this is simply a move that is not very good. Now, knight d2 is a move that I played more out of inertia and feeling the need to play anything rather than continuing to think, and the reason is that I saw that I could trade the bishops here and play a move like b4, for example, but after c6 and queen to b6 here, pressuring the pawn on e3, Black's queenside pawn is very, very stable against being captured. Also, after queen b6, there's no entry on the a file here for my rook. No rook a6, no rook a7, pressure on e3. And what exactly do I have going on? Now, of course, I could play d4 here, but after knight g6, both these pawns on e4 and e5 are kind of loose here. It's not really clear which pawn is actually weaker in this situation, but it doesn't feel like white has a whole lot. So I was very unhappy, but probably I should have traded the bishops and played b4 anyway. But I finally decided, okay, I'm going to go knight d2. Now, this was also based on remembering a similar structure and a position that I had looked at before the game. Not exactly identical to this, but I remember there was a position where black has this pawn on c5 and a queen on b6, and the computer really liked the knight being on d2 to protect against getting double pawns on the b file. So I remember this during the game that the knight on d2 made some sense, but then to my horror, Pragg played this move queen d7. Now, the reason I say to my horror is because everything that I recalled from before the game where the knight d2 protecting the bishop was correct involved black's pawn being on c5. But here, Pragg does not push the pawn, so now the knight on d2 simply is not doing anything whatsoever. So here I played the move knight to e2, and this is another move that I played more out of inertia and drifting than anything else here because I couldn't come up with anything that I was really happy about. I could have traded the bishops on e6, but after pawn takes bishop, both sides have these stacked pawns on top of each other, but with black being able to play rook a8 and trade some rooks on either the a file or potentially the f file down the road, very, very hard to come up with any sort of plan for white whatsoever. And I simply didn't want to trade the bishop, so I went knight e2. Now, you're probably wondering, why didn't I play for the content? Play for content. Play for the memes. Of course, I could have sacked the rook with rook takes knight on f6, but after pawn takes queen to h4 and king h7, black is simply much better here because if I go rook to f1, for example, there's knight to g8 here, and black is guarding these pawns on f6 and h6 in the position. Even a move like f5 is also possible as well, and it did not feel like the advantage or the attack is ever happening. So I could have gone for this, but considering the tournament situation as well as the fact that I'm playing such a strong player, it really didn't feel right. Now, that being said, if this were the last round of the tournament and I needed to win the game to, say, finish in first place, I almost certainly would sack the rook on f6 here, but in this situation, I felt there's a very good chance I would lose the game, and I don't really feel like it's the last of the opportunities I will have in the tournament. So when all is said and done, I play the move knight to e2, and now Pragg plays the move rook to a8, which is also an excellent move showing fantastic understanding, but beyond understanding, showing that Pragg is being very, very objective and not trying to go for too much. The one advantage you could argue that white has in this position is white has this open file for the tower. The rook can go to a6 or a7 down the road, but once Pragg moves the queen to d7 and now goes rook to a8, I no longer control the a file. Black is able to trade the rooks here. And if anything, I think white has to be a little bit careful here to not be worse, which is why after another long think, I decided to take the bishop on e6. Now, this is not a move that I wanted to play. Obviously, if I'd known we'd get here, I would have traded the bishops much earlier, but I still have to come up with a move, so I decided to take the bishop. Pragg takes back with the pawn here, and now I trade the rooks and go knight to g3. Now, what I'm angling here is I'm hoping that Pragg will play this move rook to a2, because I thought maybe I can't do it. Computer's not convinced, but I thought maybe I could sack the rook with rook takes f6, pawn takes, and now let's move knight to h5. Apparently, after king f7, queen h4, knight g8, queen g4, king f8. I guess black is actually just winning here because if I sack the queen, after takes, I do fork the king and the queen, but black can simply take this pawn on b2, take the pawn on c2, and these knights are no match for the rook, combined with black being able to push p down the b file and the c file as well. So I was hoping that I would have something like this, some idea, but Pragg immediately goes knight g6, stopping any ideas of me being able to sack the rook for the knight on f6. So after knight g6, I now go queen to d1, and here Pragg plays a very, very pragmatic move, rook to a2. Now, black could try to play on the move like c5, but if I'm able to get this move knight h5, and let's say we get the trade, knight f8, and knight to f3, it feels like my forces are starting to come towards the king side. I might be able to go g4 and g5 and open up this g file or the h file as well, and it feels like it's getting a little bit spicy here. So black could go wrong very easily. But after queen to d1 here, Pragg plays this move rook to a2, and unfortunately, I have to play this move queen b1. Now, I would love to play knight h5 here, but after takes, and knight to f8, I simply have no infiltration on either the f7 square or the e8 square. Both of these squares are covered by the black queen on d7, so I have no infiltration. Black actually is using the open a file, and he's threatening to create a bunch of kebabs on the second rank here, so I have to play something like rook b1, and while it's not much worse for me, after a simple move like knight h7 and knight f6, let's say we get this position, what exactly am I playing for? If I ever go d4, suddenly the pawn on e4 is very, very weak here, as the knight is always spying it, so I don't really want to push d4. But if I don't push d4, what else can I really do? I can go rook to a1, trade the rooks here. Black goes queen c6, stopping queen a8, and pressuring the pawn on c2. Let's say we go c3 and b4 here with ideas like queen b6. And I don't really see how white can ever be better. If anything, I think black is the one who's probably playing for a win. So I play queen to b1, Pragg goes rook to a8, and now I play this move queen to d1. Now, I really wanted to play the move b4. I seriously considered playing this move in the position, but there were a couple things going on. First of all, actually, sorry, I repeated once, and then here I did not play b4. Now, I spent about 15 minutes before making this decision to make a repetition with queen d1. I seriously did consider b4 here, but once again, I simply did not really see where my play was. Let's say black goes rook a4, knight f3, something like queen c6, queen b3, and d5. Exactly how am I breaking through? Black's knights are very, very, very well placed, just like my knights are. He's pressuring e4, he's guarding e5 against being captured. Even if we get king h2, king h7 here, I still don't see a plan, and with the weak pawn on b4, the weak pawn on c2 as well, I feel like if anybody's going to be better, it's definitely going to be black. So I didn't really feel like that made a whole lot of sense. I also considered playing the move c3 here, but black can now sack a pawn temporarily with this move pawn to b4, and after takes and queen to b5, I think that black doesn't really have any weaknesses here. The pawns are still very stable in the center of the board. b4 is weak, d3 is weak, b2 is also potentially weak, and once again, if anybody's better, I felt that it can only be black. When you add on top of that the fact that I spent 15 minutes here and I'm now down about 15 minutes on the clock, maybe not 15, 10 or a little more than 10, it really doesn't make sense. Like, what exactly am I trying to do here? Am I trying to just lose the game, just keep the game going because I feel like it? I didn't feel like against a player like Pragg, it was the right moment to go all in. So at the end of the day, I end up playing this move queen to d1 here, which is a threefold repetition, and the game ends peacefully with a draw. Now, you're probably wondering, why didn't I play on? Surely I have to take chances. Now, obviously, this tournament is very long. There are 14 rounds. There are still 10 more rounds. And I have the feeling that I will get opportunities or chances to potentially win games later on. I feel that a lot of players will start going crazy as the event progresses. But most importantly, based on my past experience, I do think there will be chances. Now, if I'm wrong and I don't have any chance to win games, then yes, maybe I'll look back on the game yesterday against Abasov as well as the game today and regret not taking more risk perhaps. But it simply was not there today specifically to go insane and try to win the game. So definitely a little bit disappointed, especially as it felt like Pragg didn't really have to come with a lot of moves, and it was just very dry, very boring Spanish game that ends in a draw. But it is what it is. Now, overall, I feel pretty good about myself. I'm very unhappy about the game against Vita, which I lost, but to his credit, he played very well. I also made a couple decisions that were definitely subpar in that game, and I deserve to lose. Outside of that game, however, everything's going pretty much according to plan. I've drawn my 3 games. I haven't really gotten necessarily the play I wanted, but it's not that big of a deal. Now, certainly, as the tournament progresses and we continue with round 5 after the rest day tomorrow, I do intend to take more chances, so we will see what happens, because sooner or later I will have to win some games. But for right now, I'm just trying to steady the ship, take it one game at a time, and we'll see what happens. So, on that note, you guys, tomorrow is going to be a rest day. There will be no game being played, which means no recap. But after the rest day on Tuesday, we resume with round 5 when I believe that I'm playing with the black pieces against Alireza Firouzja. It might be Jan Nepomniachtchi, but I believe it's Alireza. Now, Alireza is continuing to play his game today against Nijat Abasov. It seems unlikely that he will win the game as of the present time. If he does win, he'll be back to an even score. If he doesn't, he will still be on the same score that I am, which is -1, having lost 1 game to Jan Nepomniachtchi. Now, on the flip side of it, it looks like Fabiano Caruana will most likely draw his game against D. Gukesh. They'll both stay very close to the top of the leaderboard. But Jan Nepomuceno has won the last two candidates tournament. It would appear is off to the races as he's likely going to win a second game against Vidit Santosh Gujarati and take the sole lead as we head to the rest day. So it's going to heat up. It's getting very exciting. But again, I'm just taking it one game at a time, and we'll see how it progresses. So on that note, I hope you guys have enjoyed this recap from the fourth round of the FIDE Canada's tournament being held here in Toronto, Canada. If you are not already subscribed to my channel, make sure that you smash that subscribe button below, and we'll be back on Tuesday with a recap after my fifth round game here in Canada. See you guys soon. Have a great rest of your day. Bye.